So this video is to talk about my birth story. As many of you know, I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy little boy on Thanksgiving Day, November 26th of 2020. And it was actually exactly 10 months. I was given the due date of November 26th, and he was born 14 minutes into the day on the 26th. And my pregnancy, labor, delivery was pretty smooth, but there were definitely a couple bumps in the road. And I just wanted to share my experience to help other mothers prepare better. I feel as though I could have prepared a lot more and a lot better for my experience, but you live and you learn. For any future children that may come, I can better prepare for their arrival. So I kind of want to break it down into different segments. So like I said, pregnancy, I found out in March of last year that I was pregnant. It was funny because I knew I was pregnant. My cycle is very regular and it did not come on time. And my husband was like, just give it another week. And I was like, a whole week? But I waited a week, took a pregnancy test, it was positive. And so that led into the next 40 weeks. I was at work on a Monday and I was supposed to work, it was the week of Thanksgiving, so I was supposed to work Monday and Tuesday, and I was going to be off Wednesday through the rest of the week. But I finished all my work on Monday and I asked my supervisor, I was like, hey, you know, I'm done with all my work. Is it possible for me to take the day off tomorrow? You know, just to kind of, I knew the baby was coming. Visually, like, my stomach had dropped, like he had dropped. It was clear that he was on his way. I hadn't started contracting or anything, but I could just tell like he was moving down. So she granted me that day off, and so Tuesday I just kind of did any last minute preparation. I was glad I had that day off. So that next day, Wednesday, November 25th, about 2:40 in the morning, I had my first contraction. Well, I had the first contraction that I knew was a contraction. And I hadn't had my cycle for the whole year, basically. So it felt real familiar. It felt like cramps. And I was like, oh, I have not missed this feeling at all. So I started contracting, and on my pregnancy app, there is a contraction timer. So literally from 2:39 in the morning on November 25th until I had my baby, I was contracting. I didn't have any time longer than about 7.5 minutes in between contractions. So once I started contracting, or noticed my contractions at 2:39 in the morning, they did not stop, except for when I took a 15-minute shower. And literally as soon as I turned the water off, they started back. So yes, it's November 25th. It's basically 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm contracting, I'm timing them. And like I said, every contraction is about 5 minutes apart. There were some that were a little bit longer. Well, only a couple that were a little bit longer, and there were many that were much shorter. So as I was timing them, I was like, okay, this seems to be moving kind of fast. And at my appointment the week before with my OB, I was not dilated at all. Like 0 centimeters. I was not effaced. Literally, there was no signs that he was coming. So when I started contracting, I was like, okay, yes, I'm gonna be like 6-7 centimeters, you know, by the time, because I had an appointment that day. I was like, I'm gonna be probably like 5-6-7 centimeters dilated. I can go right to the hospital, have this baby.
It's gonna be over and done with.
Absolutely not. So I texted my doula, and I was like, hey, it was like, by the time I actually decided to text her, it was like 4 or 5, maybe even closer to 7 in the morning, because I didn't want to wake her up. And I knew that even though my contractions were pretty close together, they weren't painful yet. So I knew, it was like, well, I'm pretty sure this is supposed to hurt a little bit more than it is. So I texted her, she got back with me, and she basically encouraged me, just go to your appointment, see how dilated you are. So my husband takes me to my appointment, and I find out that I'm 2 to 3 centimeters dilated and I'm 70% effaced. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm gonna assume, maybe I shouldn't assume that you know what that means, but you should just go do a quick Google search. Okay, so I go to my appointment, I find out I'm 2 to 3 centimeters dilated, I'm 70% effaced, and my heart broke a little bit because I expected to be a little bit further along because my contractions were very consistent. Like I said, they hadn't become painful yet, but they were consistent. So I'm like, I've never heard anyone who was having contractions consistently every 5 minutes and who wasn't like super close to delivering their baby. I just had never heard that before. So I assumed that I was close. So just, you know, during that day, my mother-in-law came over, her and my husband, they had someone put in a stairwell. That way, whenever I had the baby, I would be able to carry him up and down the stairs and walk up and down the stairs. So that was going on. I was about to cook myself some breakfast, but they were like, well, maybe you shouldn't because, you know, and we all thought I was close to delivery. So they're like, well, maybe you shouldn't because, like, you don't want to have an enema, basically meaning you're going to poop whenever you deliver this baby and you don't want all that to come out. So I didn't eat very much. I think I may have eaten like a couple eggs or something. I was making myself some eggs and bacon, so I ended up giving the bacon to my husband and I ate the eggs and some fruit. So fast forward throughout the day, contractions are consistent. They're getting stronger. They're still not painful. But I remember having like a video chat with my sister and my parents. And like during the course of our maybe 5-10 minute conversation, I had to stop multiple times like during a contraction because it was very, very painful. Well, it was painful enough to have to take a pause. It wasn't as bad as it was gonna get. So got off the phone with them, just kind of doing some curb walking, doing different things, sitting on a ball, trying to get this baby down. So fast forward to about 3 o'clock. I believe at this time is when my doula came to our house. And because, you know, with my contractions being so consistent and me just talking to her throughout the day, she was like, I think we're gonna have a baby today. So, you know, she went ahead and came over. Me and my husband, you know, we kind of swayed, slow dancing, listened to some music. And then actually my acupuncturist came over to treat me, to help, you know, kind of stimulate everything, to help the process move along as well. By the time we actually left to go to the hospital, it was around, I would say like 6:30.
So mama's on her way to the hospital. She's having contractions. Some really good ones, some real big ones. I know I'm nervous now. It's starting to hit me. How you feel, mama?
Alright.
Okay. You excited?
For the most part.
Alright, she's gonna have another contraction in a little bit, so here we come.
So we get to the hospital, get checked in, everything. That process alone was very, very interesting. I could only have my husband and my doula there, so my acupuncturist couldn't come into the hospital because COVID. We got checked into the hospital. So it's funny because before I actually got triaged, I had to give them a urine sample. So basically the whole time that I'm in the wheelchair, we're on the elevator, we're trying to get to the room, I'm contracting and I am loud and I'm in pain. My contractions have clearly gotten extremely painful. During the time that my doula and my acupuncturist were at my house, things were heating up exponentially.
Breathe, hum through it, breathe deep. Long breath. You got this, mama. This is how we get him on the earth side. Breathe through it, mama. Breathe through it. Rock, rock. Nice and slow. You got it. You got it.
It was extremely painful. I could no longer talk through my contractions. I could only focus on breathing and getting through however long they were at that point, probably 45 to 60 seconds. So my husband was there, you know, rubbing on me, you know, trying to comfort me and just encourage me, because once you get to that point in labor, no one can say anything or do anything to make the pain better. You just have to deal with it. At that point, that baby is coming, and that's just what it is. So I have to give them a urine sample. I'm like, y'all can get urine later? Like, clearly I am in labor. Why do you need my urine? So anyways, I'm in the bathroom trying to do a urine sample. My husband's, he went back downstairs to get our stuff. So my doula's waiting for me to use the restroom. I'm contracting while I'm trying to give a urine sample. So it's funny because so I was in the wheelchair at the check-in desk. I think I contracted right before I got up to go to the restroom. So I'm in the restroom. I'm like, Lord, please help me to go to the bathroom and get this done before I contract again. Wrong. It didn't happen. I had to deal with a contraction while I'm trying to give a urine sample, and then, you know, do that whole process. So after I give that to them, they take me to the triage room. They check my dilation. I think at that point I'm 6 to 7 centimeters, and I'm like super loud. There's like this other couple beyond the curtain next to us, and they're so quiet. I'm like, is she in labor? Because I'm sure if she's not, I'm making it sound very terrifying. Y'all, I'm pretty sure every room on that hospital floor could hear me that night because I was in so much pain. I was over it, and I still had a long way to go. At this point, it's probably 7:15 or so, and I still had a long way to go. I had about 5 hours left. So eventually they get us checked in, we get moved into a room, and I get put into a robe. And at this point, it's go time, in the sense of active labor, you know, screaming. My husband, my doula, the nurses trying to do everything they can. So at one point, they had put an IV in one of my hands, I think my right hand first. And because of the pain and how I was maneuvering myself to get through the pain, I ended up bending my IV, or the needle, so they had to take it out of that hand and put it in my other hand. So I still have a scar on both hands from where they inserted those IV needles. I labored in the bed for a little bit, and then eventually they put me on a ball, and my water never broke. Let's start there. So my water never broke. I labored a lot in the bed. I think at one point I tried to get up and walk around. Honestly, it's foggy now, which is why I wish I would have recorded this sooner. But I labored for about 3 hours before I elected to have my water broken. I did not want to have my water broken. I wanted it to break naturally, but my son was not coming, and it was just excruciatingly painful. And they said, you know, if you get your water broken, it will probably speed things along. So before we got to that point, I think they tried the peanut ball, which is where it's an exercise ball, but it's in the shape of like a peanut, and they put it in between your legs, and it's supposed to help the baby come down, and it's supposed to be more comfortable. But honestly, there's absolutely no such thing as a comfortable position whenever you are in labor to have a child. I've only had one child, and everything we tried did not work. I'm sure maybe other people have maybe found a better position, but I did not find a position that night that was comfortable. It all hurt. It was all trash and very, very painful. So at one point I was like, can y'all just cut this baby out of me? Like, I got to such a place where I was just so over it. I was like, I can't do this. I literally said, I can't do this, as if somehow labor is just gonna stop and the baby's just gonna just disappear. Like, you absolutely are going to do this even if you feel like you can't. Because at this point, you know, I had been laboring for over 12 hours. At this point, it's closer to 17 hours of labor. I had barely eaten. I had not slept at all because I had been up since 2:30 that morning. So I barely ate. I hadn't slept. I wasn't even thinking about drinking any water. My little playlist that I made, that never got played. I don't know what happened with that, but I probably would have been like, shut it off anyways. I wasn't praying. I wasn't reading no script. My mind was so gone. None of that even occurred to me to help myself. Like, I'm sure all of those things would have worked and helped, but I was over it. I was literally like so done. Like, why is this baby still in my body? Why am I still dealing with this? Why am I still here? What is going on? Why isn't he coming down? Or why am I still not dilated? And one of the nurses, she sucked when she checked my cervix. She would like insert her finger but then like twist her hand, and it was just like, lady, I'm clearly in labor. You need to find someone who knows how to do this, because you don't. At one point, a nurse came up to me and tested me for COVID, and she didn't even ask. She didn't tell me what she was about to do. She literally came up to me. There was multiple people around me doing whatever they were doing, and she just stuck the thing up my nose, up one nostril, and stuck it up the next and walked off. I'm like, bruh, I'm in labor. We couldn't have done this before, which I guess in her defense, by the time I got to the hospital, there was no time for any of that. I would have always been irritable. And so they had offered me some pain medication. I don't remember the name of it, but I was like, no, I don't want anything that's going to slow it down. And at that point, because I had become more dilated, they were worried that the effects of the medication would affect the baby and make him like lethargic and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, absolutely not. I don't want anything to negatively harm him. And I did not want an epidural. My goal from the time I got pregnant was to have a natural birth. Most everyone I told that to was like, you're crazy. You need to get the epidural because you just don't even know. So at one point I was like, I want an epidural. Give me what I need. I didn't care. But because my contractions were so close together, I wouldn't have been able to sit still for them to do the epidural process. So I couldn't even do that. So the only medication I got was to calm me down in between contractions, because I was contracting so forcefully, so frequently. I had no time to rest in between contractions, which was further causing fatigue, and I was just done. But it did calm me down greatly during my breaks. So I would contract, and then it would go away, and during that time I was able to get a little bit of rest in preparation for the next contraction. So shout out to whoever created that, because while it did not take away not 1 ounce of pain, it did help me to rest in between my contractions. So like I said, at this point, I'm not dilated, but 6 to 7 centimeters. So I elect to have my water broken. So the doctor who would later deliver the baby came in, explained to me what she was gonna do. She broke my water, and I believe that was about 10:30. So it's 10:30, my water just got broken, and now we're like, okay, hopefully this will speed things along. We can get this process going. We can get this baby here. And I secretly, actually not too secretly, I vocalized I wanted my baby to be born on the 25th, because my husband, he's born on the 21st. I'm born on the 23rd, and I thought it would be cool if the baby was born on the 25th, but it didn't work out that way, and that's fine. He came whenever he was supposed to come. By the time I actually got dilated, like I think it took about an hour, about 11:30, I was dilated 8 to 9 centimeters. And I'm like, why is it taking so long? Because granted, at 10:30, I'm 67 centimeters. They break my water. It takes a whole hour to dilate another 1.5 centimeters, 2 centimeters, and I'm still not quite at 10. So I'm like, what can we do? Like, my water's been broken. I'm still not dilated enough. What the heck are we, like, what is it gonna take for this baby to come? And so, my husband, he was a G, because I know he hates seeing me like that, because I had another medical situation a year prior to that, and he didn't like seeing me in pain. So I knew it was rough on him. We both, he had a long day too. Like, we've been doing this all doggone day. At this point, it's like, this is a joke. Like, this baby is not coming for another 3 days, is how it felt. So, at one point he got in the bed with me just to kind of cradle me. He was in my ear, hey babe, you're doing great, you're so strong. My doula as well. Oh my gosh, so let me get into that. So my doula had showed my husband a couple different techniques to help to ease the pain for contractions. And one of those was kind of squeezing my pelvis or like my hip area when a contraction came, to kind of relieve some of that pressure. They literally had to tag team, because I was contracting so frequently for so long to where they would tire out. One person would do it for a little bit, they had to switch out, and then it was so ridiculous. It was so ridiculous. So yeah, they were switching out, trying to comfort me. At one point, I had to have like a cold pack because I was hot. It was just, and none of this is out of the ordinary to my knowledge, but whenever you've never done it before, it's all out of the ordinary. So that was that. When my doctor broke my water, she told me, whenever you feel the sensation that you're about to poop, you need to call me. So my doula, my husband, and the nurse are in the room with me. And at one point, I feel like I'm about to poop my whole life out. So like, I feel like I'm pooping. I feel like I don't even know how I gathered the words to say that, because at this point I was barely talking. I was literally just moaning and screaming and yelling. Like, I was not speaking actual words. So during one of my contractions, like I said, it felt like I was about to poop my whole entire body out. And so they ran to get the doctor, and
I still was only 9 centimeters dilated. I was like, listen,
somebody better figure something out, because this is not working. What is the problem? Like, somebody please tell me, what's the problem? So lo and behold, eventually, I guess it was probably about midnight, that I'm finally 10 centimeters dilated. I can start pushing, because at this point I done felt about 5 or 6 times that I'm about to poop. And someone had actually explained to me, when you push your baby, it's gonna feel like you're pushing from the back and like you're having a bowel movement. And whether or not that's correct and, you know, scientifically correct, that's what it felt like. That's the sensation I used to push the baby out. So we finally get, you know, it's game time, like for real this time. They got the lights, you know, they got all the nurses. We ready to push this baby out. So if you don't know, you generally push through a contraction. That's what helps to bring the baby out. So I'm 10 centimeters dilated. We're about to push. Let me tell y'all something. I think I ended up only pushing like 10 times, but I think I will probably not do a hospital birth again if I have more children, because there were so many people surrounding me and everyone's yelling at me to push, and I'm like, I think after the first time I pushed, I like screamed. I was like, ah, like while I pushed, and the doctor was like, listen, you need to quiet down, because I need to tell you what you're supposed to do, and I can't tell you while you're yelling at me. And I was like, okay, my bad. And I understood what she meant, but at this point, y'all, it was 22 hours later. I'm like, I'm gonna freaking scream this baby out. So once she told me that, she kind of told me where to direct that energy and into my push. So I'm pushing, nothing happens, obviously, the first push. Well, for me, nothing happened the first push. So I keep pushing, and it's like, I didn't realize how long my contractions were. So I thought that they were telling me to push even when I was not contracting, which was not the case looking back on it. Because apparently my husband told me that they explained this whole pushing process to me. I don't remember any of that. So they basically told me, you know, you're gonna push through your contraction, you're gonna give us a good strong 10 seconds, and then you're gonna stop, take a break, you're gonna push again. That's all I remember. And I think that was told to me after the fact from him. So yeah, I pushed the first time, nothing happens. Push a few more times, and I feel something coming out, and there's so much pressure and pain. I could have swore I pushed my baby out 5 times. I'm like, and I literally asked the doctor, I was like, is he not out yet? I was like, what is happening? Like, why isn't he out yet? I could have swore something came out. Something was coming out. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't him. And then this other nurse, which I'll talk about her later, she was like, sweetie, I'm gonna need you to calm down. And I was like, you better be glad I don't have the energy nor the wherewithal to tell you off right now. Because I guess for nurses and people who are working labor and delivery, this is standard to them. But this is my first time having a baby. I am in excruciating pain. You have no idea how long I've been in labor. You have no idea what I'm feeling in this moment, regardless of whether or not you had a kid. If you're not in that moment, you just don't understand. You can't explain the pain. It's just psycho. So I thank, by the grace of God, for her, I didn't have the time nor the energy to address her specifically for her comment. So I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna get more into that. But anyway, so at this point I probably pushed about 6 times. I think he had crowned at that point. And they're like, do you want to touch his head while he comes out? No, get this baby out. I don't want to do none of that. I thought I probably would, but I was like, at this point, I just want this baby out of my body, because this is trash. Literally, this was trash. So I think my doula's like, he's almost there. You gotta push. And the nurse is like, you gotta push, keep pushing. My husband's like, push. I'm like, all these people tell me to push. Just hush, just let me do this. That's how I felt. So eventually the baby comes out. They're like, he's out, whatever. So they clean him off as much as they can without cleaning him off too much to get him, you know, directly on me for skin to skin. And oh my gosh, just literally seeing him look up at, like, I was, they put your baby on your chest, and just he just looked right up at me. It was the most surreal moment ever, because you spend your whole pregnancy imagining what your kid will look like, and what will they sound like, and how will this be whenever I first see them. He didn't look anything like I expected him to look. He was the most beautiful, not that I expected to not have a beautiful baby, but he just looked totally different than what I had imagined in my mind. And he was the most beautiful human being I had ever seen in my life. He was strong and healthy. He peed and pooped on me as soon as he came out. So I was like, okay, well, nice to meet you too. And then, so they put him on my chest, and I'm just like, I cannot believe that you're here. Like I said, you spend your whole pregnancy imagining what this moment will be, and it's here, and he's finally here. And it's just like, oh my goodness. So put him on my chest. I still have the cold pack on my head because, the struggle. And then the placenta comes out, which you don't have to push that out. It just comes out on its own. And it didn't hurt as much as a baby coming out, but it's bigger than that hole. So it was like more pressure than anything. I ended up tearing. I had a 3rd-degree tear, and it didn't exactly go from my rooter to my tutor, but it was almost there. And so she actually immediately started trying to repair my tear, and I'm like, I can't believe you're trying to repair me right now. My kid literally just came out. I'm trying to enjoy this moment, because I want to do the whole golden hour thing where we have skin to skin for an hour. We try to latch him on to breastfeed. I want to do all of that. But because of the degree of my tear, she immediately started to try to patch me up. So I ended up losing a lot of blood, and because of the degree of my tear, the tear actually was deeper than she thought it was. She was like, I'm gonna have to take you into the operating room. Actually, no, let me back up. She shot me 6 times with lidocaine down there with a big old huge needle. It was terrible. Like, at this point, the nurses are pretty much not by me anymore. My doula's right here. My husband's still right here. The kid, my child, my son is right here. I'm holding him, and she's trying to repair me. And it's just like, bruh. I mean, I get it. I totally get it. But it's like, she's telling me to be still. Oh, you have to be still. You are literally stitching the most sensitive area of my body after I just delivered a 7-pound, 5-ounce child, and you want me to be still? I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. This hurts. Even with the lidocaine, it was so, I guess the tear was so deep, she was having to go deeper, and I'm like, this hurts. So because she could tell I couldn't take the pain, and the tear was worse than she thought, she was like, I'm gonna have to do this like an actual operating procedure, because the tear is deeper, you're in pain, I can't do this, you won't be still. I'm like, do what you gotta do, fam. Because what we're not gonna do is ruin the first few moments that I have with my child, especially if I'm not, it wasn't an emergency, I wasn't dying or anything. It was just, to prevent any further blood loss or whatever. I'm pretty sure I'm oversimplifying it, and I'm pretty sure she needed to do it at that time, but I was not having it. So she actually had to deliver another baby via C-section. So she's like, I'm gonna come back for you in about an hour to do your procedure. It should only take about 30 minutes, whatever. So then they send in the anesthesiologist to explain to me my 2 options. I could either go under anesthesia, or I could get a spinal tap, which is an epidural. So I ended up having to get an epidural anyway, just after the fact. Because a spinal tap should only numb the area like from my navel and lower. Whereas general anesthesia, I would be completely out. And I didn't want to do that. To me, that was not an option. So, we're chilling with the baby. My doula ends up, wrapping up. She left. So me and my husband and my kid. And I'm just like, wow, we're a family of 3. Like, we have a child, and he's amazing. He's beautiful. I cannot believe that this process is over, or so I thought. So I want to say, so he was born at 12:14 in the morning on 11/26/2020. He was 7 pounds, 5 ounces, 20.25 inches long. No, 19 inches long? 20.25 inches long. Yeah. 20.25 inches long, healthy. He scored very highly on the APGAR test. He was perfect. Literally the most amazing miracle ever. So I don't remember what time they came and got me, but it may be around like 3 o'clock in the morning, 2:45, something like that. They came and got me to do the procedure. So I had already done the whole anesthesiology thing. Well, they explained to me what was going to happen. So they rolled me into the operating room. It's like lights everywhere. I've never been to the hospital like to stay for myself. I've stayed in the hospital with people, but I've never been to the hospital. I've never been in the hospital. I've never been admitted into the hospital. I've never had surgery. I've never had anything. So they have to prop my legs up to do the surgery. They explain the process again for the spinal tap. The anesthesiologist does it. I start to feel the bottom of my body get numb. But more of my body got numb than I think was supposed to happen. And I don't think this was any fault of his, but I think I was just so weak and my body was just relenting itself to whatever at this point. So they got the spinal tap done. They prepped for surgery. They prepped me for surgery. They explained what they were going to do. They had already told me and my husband that it should only take about 30 minutes. So they start the surgery. I'm fully awake. I'm fully aware. They're having a whole conversation about some nurse and how her man cheated on her. And they're trying to encourage her to leave him. And she's like, no, but I love him. Like, I was like, I can't believe y'all are talking about this while y'all are operating on me. So there were 2 nurses, the anesthesiologist and the doctor who delivered my baby, who was performing the surgery. They had these 2, like, I don't know what you call them. My arms were able to go out on them. I guess like a stand or something. They came out from both sides of the table. So I was able to put my arms out, just stretch out. And the anesthesiologist stayed behind me, and I had 2 nurses. So one nurse, at one point, I was like, is there something on my chest? She was literally like resting her arm, like, or her elbow or her hand or something on my chest. So I asked the anesthesiologist, I'm like, is there something on my chest? Because I feel real heavy right now. Like, my legs are lifted up in the air, propped up on these glorified stirrups. I've already, like, not eaten, not drank, not slept. So I'm like, I feel this pressure on my chest. And at this point, I'm starting to feel numb more than just, like, below my belt. So I'm like, I asked him, I was like, am I supposed to feel numb? And I don't remember what he said. I think he said no, but I was like, I don't feel right. So that process, I think, ended up lasting for about 45 minutes. And I found out later that my husband him and the baby was walking around like, where's my wife? Y'all told me this was going to be 30 minutes. It's been close to an hour. Where's my wife? So yeah, the lady, she ended up getting off my chest. But then, like, on the other side where my arm was out, she was like resting on my arm. I'm like, can you get off of me? What is wrong with you? Like, it was so uncomfortable. The only good thing about it was that I couldn't feel any pain. I couldn't even feel pressure. I couldn't feel not a thing. So they finished up the surgery. They wheeled me back into the room. As far as I knew, everything went well. I did lose a significant amount of blood, but hey, it's childbirth. Things happen. So this is where things get a little bit dicey. So I get rolled back into the room. The baby is asleep. My husband's, on the very uncomfortable situation they have for guests. I think at this point it's close to 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't really quite recall, but all I remember is seeing the clock at 4 o'clock and seeing the clock at 4:15. Because like I said, he was kind of trying to get some rest. I had finally gotten done with my surgery. The baby was sleeping. And I was just sitting up. I think we had a brief conversation about whatever. And I was just starting to look around, and I just started feeling off. Like, I felt like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, my mind was just like leaving. It was like very eerie. It was very like otherworldly to a certain extent. And I was like, hey babe. He was like, yeah. I was like, I don't feel right. And that's literally the last thing I said. And then I don't know what happened after that. So from the moment I said, hey babe, he responds. I say, I don't feel right. I clock out, in a sense. Like, I didn't die. I didn't code or anything, but I clock out. I'm gone. I have no, I don't know where I went, but it was not Earth. The next thing I know, I'm waking up to like 10 people in the room calling my name, shaking me, calling like, hey, Carlin, hello, Carlin, wake up. And I'm like, what? Where am I? I came to, and well, it took me a while to come to. I felt like I was coming back from somewhere else. Like, I felt like, I don't know if y'all have ever seen Big Hero 6, where Baymax is like in this colorful, like, other place. That's where I felt like I was coming back from. I felt like I was coming from like a deep, distant place from space and coming back to myself. Granted, you know, thankfully I knew who I was. Like, as soon as I came back, like, it took me a while to come back, but once I was back, I knew who I was. I knew where I was. I knew, you know, I knew what was going on. They asked me my name. They asked me where I was, what just happened. As far as like, you know, you just gave birth, like that kind of thing. And so I'm like, what happened? And so because there's so many people in the room, I'm like, something bad must have happened. My husband, he's like surrounded by 2 or 3 nurses trying to calm him down because he didn't know what happened to me. He thought I was dying. Apparently, like, as soon as I told him I didn't feel right, he came right over to the bed and was trying to ask me what was wrong. But at that point, I didn't say anything. I think he said my eyes like rolled to the back of my head and I may have started shaking or something. Like, he said he didn't know what the heck was happening. He was very afraid that I had died or that I was dying. So he called the nurse, and I don't think she came fast enough. So he was running down the hall. Hey, somebody come here, help my wife. So, eventually she called, like, I guess the red button. I think she pressed the red button. The red button means everyone comes. So the anesthesiologist was there. The obstetrician who delivered my baby was there. All the other nurses on the floor were there. Like, it was a whole thing. Just in case something, you know, really had gone wrong. Because I believe at the nurse's station, they monitor everyone in the room. But because I didn't actually code, I think my blood sugar, because like I told y'all, I hadn't eaten, I hadn't hardly drunk nothing, I hadn't slept, my body was done. I had been in labor for 22 hours, I had lost a significant amount of blood, so my body, I think, was just like, we gotta take a break because obviously she's not gonna do anything to help us, so we have to do this. So I think because I don't think blood sugar is something they monitor, they had no clue that something was wrong. So that's why he pressed the nurse's button. He ended up running down there himself. Hey, help my wife. She ended up pressing the button, and that brought everyone in there. So my husband's over here like hyperventilating. He's freaked out because he doesn't know what the heck is wrong with me. So I think, you know, he had got sick. Like, they're trying to calm him down. I'm like, oh my gosh, is he okay? They're like, he's fine. I'm like, no, he's not fine. Do y'all see my husband right now? Because he's not fine. I'm fine now. He's not. I was like, can I please call someone? But at the, you know, like I said, they would only allow my doula and one other person in the hospital, or my husband in the hospital. And they wouldn't, even though she had left, they wouldn't let, you know, someone else come. And I was like, I need to call somebody to be with him, because can you imagine seeing your significant other die, or you think it's dying? Like, I would be freaked out too, and I would need some type of somebody. I'm like, y'all ain't got no victim advocate, y'all ain't got no support people. Like, this isn't normal. It's not normal for you to see your spouse or whoever to just go off. That's not normal. So I ended up calling his brother. He didn't answer. I think he had told me to call my sister, so I called my sister. And I was like, somebody need to come here and be with him, because what he just experienced was traumatic. So yeah, that happened. She ended up not coming, or he ended up telling her he was fine. And throughout this, the baby's fine. Like, the baby's asleep. There's nothing wrong with the baby. So that was extremely scary for us. So I ended up calling my doula, and I was like, look, I know you probably can't come back, but can you please try to come back? But I didn't want her to come because she didn't live in town, and I didn't want her to come all the way back. So she ended up literally staying on FaceTime with us till like 7 o'clock in the morning, because even though I eventually got like some Gatorade, they wouldn't let me eat, but I had gotten some Gatorade to kind of replace electrolytes. I still felt weird whenever I would close my eyes. Like, I still felt like I was going to drift back off to wherever I went. And I was afraid to go to sleep. I knew I needed sleep, but I knew my husband was not going to sleep whenever we didn't know what was going to go on with me. I couldn't sleep knowing that he couldn't sleep. So we're both trying to be each other's support. And I'm like, we ain't never going to get no sleep, because I still feel like very weak. you know, he was concerned about me, and so it was a wreck. So my doula literally stayed on FaceTime with us until 7 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, that was that. The next day, we got moved into the maternity ward. It was new. The hospital I delivered at, they had a new maternity ward. It was very nice, very, very nice. And yeah, at that point, we were on our own to a certain extent. I mean, we had nurses that came and checked up on us and stuff. But that was a pretty intense process, situation, whatever, event. But I can't stop being grateful for the fact that my child was okay. Like I said, from the time he got here, through all that, he was fine. Like, he was oblivious, which babies are oblivious anyway, but like, he didn't cry, he didn't get riled up because of all the hubbub. You know, he was fine, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But because of my tear, we got to the hospital Wednesday night, and we ended up leaving Saturday afternoon. I finally ate the next morning. I was very, very uncomfortable. Thankfully, the effects of the spinal tap lasted, you know, for a while. So I was still very numb. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel any of the pain from the repair, from birth in general. But eventually that wore off. So they did have me on pain medication at my, you know, discretion. I didn't have to take it if I didn't want to, or I didn't have to take a full dose. Took stool softeners. I was dreading my first poop because, let's be honest, after you feel like you just pooped a whole human out, now thinking about something else coming out of that very sore area, I was terrified. And spoiler alert, it took me 5 days after. It was after I got home. I think it was 5. I did poop in the hospital, I think the day after, which was very interesting. It's funny because every time they would bring us food, I would be hesitant to eat, because I'm like, this food has to come out. Eventually, I'm gonna poop. And I was dreading it. And I remember one time they brought the best meal. It was like this balsamic vinaigrette chicken with like a sweet potato. It was delicious. And when I was eating, I was like, crap, I am like ravenously eating this food. Like, I don't have to poop it out later. Like, I was not being mindful at all. But honestly, I mean, my body I needed to eat. I needed all of that. So I won't get into details about my first poop. But I was dreading the ones at home, because I was like, okay, they have me on stool softeners here. You know, they're bringing me meals. They're taking care of me. But eventually, I'm going to have to take over this care for myself. And I'm not so confident that I'm going to be as successful when I get home. So, yeah, I ended up not pooping for like 5 days after I got home. And I was terrified. My mom had me drinking prune juice. I was taking, you know, stool softener. I was drinking water, lemon water. I was doing all the things. And that poop, I think it was more so my mind. Because, like I said, there was a lot of pressure, a lot of pain in that area. And in your mind, you can't separate one hole from the other. So I'm like, if I push too hard, I'm gonna open my tear, I'm gonna be bleeding out, I'm gonna die. Like, my mind went there. So it's like this mental fear of the first poop, and that's something that no one talks about. And it's like, I guess, a taboo topic, but first of all, everybody poops. And after you have a baby, you have to poop. I didn't have to poop before I left the hospital. I ended up pooping before I left the hospital, but that's not something that people talk about. I was constipated. I think my mind ended up making me more constipated than I actually was, because I was terrified. I actually was in love with my postpartum body. I had this robe that I had bought, and the way it was hugging my body, I was like, yes, girl, like, you are a whole mom out here. You got a whole mom bod out here. Like, I was so, like, in awe of my postpartum body. And I don't know, I didn't think about what my body would look like after I had the baby. But when I saw it, I was like, wow, that is so interesting. I was like in love. And I'm still, you know, I still have, you know, a little belly. We still working on it. But you couldn't tell me anything after I had my baby. And it wasn't like a cocky thing. It was just, I just delivered a human being into this world. Like, I did it. Like, and giving birth naturally, vaginally, that was my goal, and I accomplished my goal. I mean, it sucked. The whole process sucked. as far as actual labor. But I was just in awe of my body's ability to do what it was created to do in that sense. My husband wanted to leave the hospital after 2 days, but the doctor who came to assess me on that Friday, he was like, "You're not leaving the hospital today." He didn't really give a good reason. I think it was just to make sure my tear, was continuing to heal up okay. Because like I said, the baby was fine. I think he had a small case of jaundice, which apparently all babies are born with at least a degree of it. I had no idea that was the case. That leads into another thing of whenever, like after the baby's born, you have different types of doctors coming in to assess different types of things with the baby. And I felt as though like a doctor would come in and do whatever, and then a nurse would come in and say, "Oh, you had this assessment, how did that go, whatever." So at one point, I didn't know that the doctors were testing my baby for jaundice, because like I said, I didn't know that that's something that all babies or most babies are born with. To some degree, babies have jaundice, and the way it was explained to us by my nurse was that it's whenever the baby's inside of the mother, he's functioning off the mother's blood. So once he's born, his blood has to then take over that process. And so jaundice happens whenever those two bloods are fighting against each other. Now, run all this by your doctor. I could totally be like not saying this correctly, but from what she explained, the mother's blood and the baby's blood are basically fighting each other, and the baby's blood has to overpower the mother's blood, because at that point it's the baby's blood's job to supply its own body. And so he had a case of jaundice, so they were just monitoring that. And I told my nurse, that nurse specifically was the best. I was like, "You know what, I'm feeling a little bit uneasy." I was like, "These doctors are coming in, different people are coming in, and I feel like I'm getting pieces and parts of information. Can you just tell me what's going on with my baby? I had no clue he had jaundice. Somebody just told me he had jaundice. They didn't tell me they were testing for jaundice. Now I find out he has jaundice. What does that mean? Is he gonna have to have light therapy?" I just felt like there's so many people coming in and out, testing all these different things. They're not necessarily telling you what they're doing. They're not giving you the results until your nurse comes in hours later talking about "Oh, your baby has jaundice." Okay, well, when were y'all gonna tell me this? Because now I'm like, is there something wrong with my child? So I'm like, I need for you to tell me everything that's going on with my child right now. I need you to tell me from the top to the bottom what's going on. What can we expect? What are we looking for? What can I do? And so from that point forward, we didn't have any more issues. Like, she was on point. She gave us all the information we needed, and I don't think that a lot of them realized that we were first-time parents, nor that I think that they even cared. It's like literally once you have a baby, it just felt like we were on our own. Like, y'all really finna send us home with a whole entire human being, and like that's it? Like, y'all not gonna try to help us? Like, y'all just gonna assume we know what we're doing? And so, like I said, once I expressed my frustrations with her, the rest of our stay was a lot more smooth. People were doing better explaining things to me. And so I felt more comfortable. I felt like okay, now I know what's going on with my kid. I know what's going on with my body. Now, we're cooking with grease now. We can handle this. I can handle this. Got home. So because of my surgery, I wasn't able to go up the stairs without being in pain. I didn't even attempt to go up the stairs. And I mean, even if I hadn't torn, childbirth is not easy on the body. So I don't know that I would have been trying to go up the stairs anyway. So we had already kind of set it up to be downstairs for at least a couple days until I had gotten the strength back to go upstairs. But being downstairs was just weird. And we have a bulb in one of our lamps that we can change the color and the brightness. And I don't know if we had it on a weird color. I just felt weird. I just felt eerie. I was scared. I was like, I have a newborn. I'm trying to heal. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm sleepy. My husband's tired. We're both like exhausted. Even though we had been in the hospital for a few days, it's like coming home and now we have to do everything. Like, I heard like back in the day, mothers used to stay in the hospital for like a week. They don't do that anymore unless there's something really wrong with the mother. And they should definitely bring that back, because I didn't know what I was doing. We didn't know what we were doing. We never had a kid. We both been around babies before, but when you bring your own child home, that's a totally different story. So I just felt off. If we had been upstairs in our own room, like where his nursery was, where our bed is, like, I think I would have felt a little bit more at home, but I still felt like I was in between. I felt like I was still in transition, which in a sense, obviously I was, but I just didn't feel at home in my own home. And I was like, what is happening? And so that's when I would say went through a period of postpartum depression and anxiety, I would say, because I was like, man, this kid is about to be with me for the next at least 18 years. And I don't think I had ever thought about parenthood beyond labor and delivery. Like, you spend your whole pregnancy getting ready for labor, getting ready for delivery, and I didn't think much beyond that. I didn't think about what life would be like at home. I didn't think about bringing him home. I didn't think about how sleep would be. I didn't think about feeding him, because if you don't know, whenever you have a baby, at that point your body gets ready to breastfeed. And so in the hospital, colostrum is what comes from the breast first, and it's like liquid gold basically. And so my milk hadn't come at that point, but when we had gotten home Saturday, maybe around like 7:30 that night, my milk finally came in. I was able to pump. It was beautiful. My baby latched immediately when he was in the hospital. Like, he did really well. I didn't have any issues with, like I said, he was perfect. Like, there was nothing wrong with him. It was me that was having all the struggles, which I'm thankful for. Let me be clear. I would rather it had been me than him. So yeah, it was just weird trying to regulate. My body was trying to regulate. My mind was trying to regulate. My husband was trying to regulate. Like, we was just all trying to regulate. And so it was rough the first few days home. My parents ended up coming that next week, and that was amazing. Their help was perfect, because I couldn't really do anything, and I was advised not to, because even though you feel better, your body is still not ready to jump back in. At least my body was not ready to jump back in, and I thought I was ready, but I wasn't. And so I was thankful to have that help, the cooking and the cleaning and helping with the baby so I could take a nap. Me and my husband, trying to take turns taking naps, which he would not sleep. It was so frustrating, but he had to handle it the way he wanted to handle it, and we got through that. The moral of the story is, I believe that next time I will not do a hospital birth, because it was just stressful, and having so many people around you trying to direct you. And I think because I had been in labor for so long, I was just done. And even knowing that I could have been better prepared, I still don't think I would ever give birth again in the hospital if I don't have to. Because I think being home or being in a birthing center, which the plan actually originally was to give birth in the birthing center with a midwife, but because of COVID and them having to deliver in the hospital and the birthing center, they didn't want to contaminate the birthing center, so they ended up just closing the birthing center down. It was so sad, and all the midwives actually ended up leaving, so I had to deliver with an obstetrician, which that's not to knock obstetricians, I just did not want to go that route, but I ended up having to go that route. Situations beyond my control. So yeah, that's my birth story. It got scary in the middle there, but we're on the back end. My son is now how old is my son? He's 9 weeks. He's 2 months old for sure. I think he's 9 weeks old at the time of this video, and he's doing well. He is the most, oh my gosh, I know that I'm probably biased to a certain extent, but most people have told me that my baby's adorable. He's so adorable. He's laughing now and smiling and trying to talk, and I don't really like when people say, I would do it all over again to get this result, because if I could not have passed out and scared myself and my husband and had a terror to that degree, I would absolutely not have done any of those things. And so I believe that my son is worthy without what it took to get him here being worthwhile, if that makes sense. But if that was absolutely the only way that he could have gotten here, then I guess in that sense, yes, I would do it all over again to have the result of my amazing, beautiful, healthy son. Me and my husband were figuring out, parenthood and sleeping. That's probably the hardest part so far about, getting sleep at night and trying to feed him and making him, helping him to be able to sleep. Like I said, I didn't deal with postpartum depression very long. Once I realized what my child needed, once I realized that I could actually provide that, I was able to learn what he needed and how to give that to him. That changed everything. Like, I'm excited. I want like 3 more children. If God blesses us to have more children, I totally see why people want to have a lot of children. Because when you look in those big bright eyes and you hear their voice, even though he's not saying words or anything, it's just he's actually crying in this very moment or whining, really. It's beautiful, and I want more. So yeah, that's my birth story. Oh, he's hungry. That's my birth story. I'm gonna, if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. I am an open book. I'm willing to share, because this is a serious thing. Motherhood is serious, childbirth is serious, and I feel like I could have been a lot more prepared had I known more. But people just don't talk about these things, and it's not regular conversation. So I would like to normalize it, because it's very normal. That's how we all got here for the most part. So yeah, that's my birth story. Thank you for watching.